Hello and welcome. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be invited to be here today by Node 4 and N4 Engage. My name is Dominic Black. I'm an analyst covering the enterprise communications market. And what I'm really focused on is around cloud communications and areas around that, like collaboration, cloud networking, and looking at how that's going to change in enterprise communications moving forward into the future. Obviously, the last couple of years, we've had some really interesting changes in the market, and just going to touch on a couple of those as we go through. COVID's obviously had a massive impact going forward, and what we've seen through COVID is a massive increase in the rate of companies enabling home working. And what we're going to look at here is how that's going to change in the future, where this rising trend of work anywhere is going to come from, and how you as a business and running the IT in the business are going to have to be able to future-proof your workforce to be able to work from home going forward. So if we look a little bit at the prevalence of home working, back in 2019, we undertake a number of different research studies, and one of those is interviewing around 2,000 businesses across USA, UK, and mainland Europe. What we do is interview businesses and really the telecoms buyer within those businesses to really understand, okay, how's that buying behavior change? What are they looking to get out of their technology decisions? And really help the industry understand what they should be doing to understand those customer requirements. When we utilized these surveys, we did one in 2019 and we did one in 2020 around June of the year. What's fascinating, as you can see out of this, is in 2019, only 20% of companies had over half of their workforce working remotely in 2019. So still, there's a pretty significant number, 20% is not small, of having a remote workforce. And we've been seeing this remote working trend growing over the last few years. What happened in 2020 obviously was COVID kicked in, and we saw a massive increase in the number of businesses that had to suddenly work remotely. And what that drove was a number of different challenges throughout the market, and really different challenges for enterprises going forward as well. But what we're seeing out of this remote working is we're not going to a full remote working world. There's going to be this hybrid model going forward in the future where some are going to be at home and some are going to be in the office. But we're not going back to a full office environment in the future. When we look at this in large businesses, only 2% of large businesses said they're likely to have no remote workers in 2021. So 98% of those large businesses are going to have some form of remote workforce. And in 2021, 77% of businesses are aiming to offer remote working, highlighting that remote working trend is here to stay. If we look at this across different industries as well, obviously some industries are much more predisposed to be able to offer have a more remote workforce. Companies within the hospitality sector, the education sector, manufacturing might not be able to have as much of a enable their workforce to work remotely, whereas services like construction, transport, and most business and professional services as well believe that they're going to be able to have a remote workforce. If we look at some of the companies on the right, we've already started to see a number of larger companies looking at how they're going to change the way that they work. BT, Virgin Money, Reuters have all said that they're going to be moving to a much more remote workforce in the future. And also, obviously, industry different roles within these companies also are going to be able to work from home better. What we can see is that C-level, sales, marketing, and admin roles are much more likely going to be able to work from home in the future. Be interesting when we look to this in the US as well and across that. A lot of companies now are looking at how they're going to change their office environment as well going forward. We spoke to one company, for example, who had a whole floor in the World Trade Center in New York. And what they were looking at doing is actually getting rid of that. And they triangulated where all of their employees were based and set up more regional offices around the New York area, not around certain role types, but really around what's easiest and what's the closest place for people to get in and go together. I think that's going to be fascinating for you as a looking at your businesses, as how are you going to enable and what are you going to look at in the future in terms of where your offices are, what those offices look like, and how they're going to your employees are going to interact from that going forward. So looking a little bit deeper as well at some of the trends coming through, we've obviously got this younger generation coming into the workforce, and the way that they're going to look to work is very different from the older generations within here. As you can see from this, by 2025, Generation Z will comprise 36% of the workforce. At the moment, it only occupies about 10%. And what we see from those newer generations, that new generation coming in, is they're very video focused. And that's just going to drive on the demand for collaboration. We also see that those habits that they have as being able, and they want to be able to work from home, they want to be able to use lots of different technologies, and they expect it all to work as seamlessly and easily as most consumer grade applications that they use. And if it doesn't work, they'll find something that does. And I think that's interesting for you as a business of how you're going to make sure that you're going to keep these Generation Z and the Millennials, Generation Y, coming into the workforce with the right tools and services that they want to use. Obviously, we see some massive benefits coming out of the remote working as well. Number one, staff are more productive. We saw that the productivity boost around telecommuters was equivalent to a full day's work, which is massive gains in productivity from remote working. We also see that remote working improves morale and happiness. Productivity is gained and is rooted in personal well-being, and someone who's happier and more fulfilled is going to put in more effort that we see. We also see that they're able to spend more time with their family, less time commuting, which saves employees time and money. So they love around that. It's also cheaper. In terms of business overheads, fewer people in the workplace means less office space, cuts cost of lease, heating, cooling rates, things like that. And lots of companies now are looking at, okay, what do we actually need within the office? Are we going to have an open plan office, or do we want to have some meeting rooms so when people do come together, they have places to collaborate face to face? We also see that it's enhancing talent recruitment and retentions. Millennials and up and coming generations, they really value that flexibility in the workplace. It might be in the next few years that if you're not offering remote working or at least flexible working, you're going to might miss out on some great employees coming through if you're having to chain them to their desks in the long term. And on top of that, it reduces attrition. As we said, people are going to be happier, people are going to be working better, people are being more productive, your employees. So the employees are less likely to move on because they're going to be happier with where they are. We also see off the back of that that if you've got employees and they take fewer sick days throughout remote working because they're able to work from home and they're not coming in and infecting the rest of the office. So we kind of established that work from anywhere and work from home is here to stay. But that really drives some challenges going forward into the future for you as a business. How are you going to enable collaboration and enable all your employees to collaborate together? How are you also going to move all your applications to the cloud? One of the big challenges about moving all your services, moving your employees out to more locations and having them work in different places, and making sure they have access to all the applications that they might need. And that's mainly going to be driven by moving to the cloud. We're also going to see a massive focus on securing all of that as well. How are you, when you now have people out the office, people at home locations going to have security, and how are you going to secure all of those new edges and all of those new devices that they're using? It used to be you only had to secure your office location. Now you're having to secure multiple different locations, multiple different applications as well, which is going to be a big challenge. And on top of that is reliable access. How are you going to get the right access? And we saw throughout COVID that access was such a big issue as people were going home to internet services which weren't able to handle multiple different cloud applications running over it, as well as your kids doing their homeschooling and someone watching Netflix at the same time. So it's a big challenge to really think around that. So we delve a little deeper into some of those and look at collaboration. Obviously, what we saw over the last year was a massive boom in the popularity of video and audio conferencing coming through. If we look 2019, only 31% of businesses were using video to communicate internally. That increased to 56% in 2020 and is going to increase to 65% in 2021. In larger businesses with over 1,000 users, that went up from 86% in 2020 up to 96% we're forecasting in 2021. And it's not all video, as I said. Audio conferencing is also quite a key role in this, as a lot of people are going, well, we like video, but we don't want to use it for everything. So we are starting to see the audio conferencing increasing as well in popularity, as people want to call into meetings and not have to do face-to-face on video. Out of COVID, we also saw some clear winners coming through. Cisco was a big winner, saw massive increases in the number of people using their WebEx Teams proposition. 76%, 45% of large businesses said that they're using WebEx, and it's a great tool that they were using to enable to collaborate between there, very focused around the calling side and also around security. We've all can't forget also around Microsoft Teams. They announced at the end of October around 115 million daily active users. A massive increase in Microsoft Teams for people who are using Microsoft internally and started using that Teams function to be able to collaborate as people were working from home and working in different locations. We also can't forget Zoom. Zoom not really seen a newer competitor on the block rather than Microsoft and Cisco, but from a video collaboration standpoint, really gained a lot of market share, and almost became a verb and a noun throughout lockdown as people used it to call their families and call home and use it a lot with business as well. But realistically, the amount of Zoom calls and Zoom quizzes I went on throughout the last year has been phenomenal. Interesting to see my grandparents also using it and really happy using these kind of services now. So it's not just this younger generation who's going to do it, but everyone's expecting now to have that video first experience. So if we look a little bit about why people adopted collaboration solutions, what was interesting around this is most of pretty much all the businesses we spoke to, the reason for driving the adoption was around flexibility, increasing productivity, uniting employees by integrating work from home and remote workforce, and simplifying that communications internally. What was fascinating coming out of this is that on top of all of the actual achieved benefits, no one really realized that they were going to improve their customer experience and improve client relationships with collaboration as well. And realized it wasn't just an inward facing tool that collaboration software was, but also really helped engage with their customers and grow through and grow those relationships by still enabling video and face-to-face relationships throughout lockdown. We also saw coming through this that there's a lot of new ways of communicating. When we talked to the enterprise and said, what solutions are you expecting to use more of in the next 12 months? As you can see from this list, you're seeing some of those video tools coming through. So Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx Teams as well. But you're also starting to see live chat and automated chatbots coming through website. As businesses really looking to understand now that as soon as someone lands on their website, they've got to try and convert them into a sale. And realistically, the best way to do that is have someone and start that conversation when they're through that. So we're starting to see this customer contact changing from inbound and outbound call centers to really through a chat experience there. And looking at integrating those chatbots into your team's environments and collaboration environments is becoming really important. We're also seeing WhatsApp grow in importance and that kind of persistent chat between people grow. And I think we'll see more and more enterprises looking at how they can integrate WhatsApp into their business processes coming forward. One other area, we've talked a lot around collaboration here, but the drive also for voice is still here. One of the key things that we do and I do at Cavell is looking at how the cloud communications market's growing. And if we look at over the last year, from the end of 2019 to the end of 2020, the UK market grew by over 1 million users moving from on-premise PBX systems to cloud PBX systems and cloud communication solutions. So we've seen massive increase there that people are moving their voice into the cloud, as it's been such a driver to get new services on there, enable working from home, and really start to move other applications to the cloud. As you can see from this slide from our enterprise study, what we've seen here is traditionally in 2019, around 49% of large businesses had between 2 and 9 business applications. And as we see that dropping down and down over the next year into 2020 and 2021, we see businesses having between 10 and 19 business applications and 20 plus business applications increasing over those years as well. So what we're seeing is a shift away from businesses not using the cloud or using a few cloud applications to moving all of their applications to the cloud. And that starts putting a real challenge from a business perspective, how they're going to enable your remote workforce to be able to access all of those as well. 55, yeah, sorry. In terms of adoption of those software as well, as you can see from here, it's across the board on multiple different types of software. Interestingly, only 89% of large businesses at the moment are using email software, as in cloud email software. But we see over the next 3 years that another 8% are going to adopt cloud email software, which is going to leave us around only 3 or 4% actually using on-premise email servers going forward in the future. Massive increases in collaboration software, up 14% in the next couple of years of people using that, but also around call and contact software as people are moving their call centers and their contact centers to the cloud. And also a lot of growth around industry specific solutions and other third party applications as well, as people look to really move some of those really key servers and key applications to the cloud that they use. And we're seeing most of the providers and vendors in the market start offering a cloud model in the future. One area that we also see coming through this is the biggest challenges due to COVID. So we kind of touched on this point that, right, everyone's gone home, everyone's moving and working remotely. It's going to be working from the office. We're seeing collaboration raise and the importance of collaboration increase massively. And we're also seeing some really big challenges coming through because of this move to the cloud for all these applications. But on top of this, the biggest challenges for business throughout this time was that security was a massive issue coming through this. Also, the end users didn't have the right hardware to be able to do remote working, but also the end users didn't have appropriate network access. And if we look at this in terms of what those top CIO considerations were when they're looking at the network over the next 3 years, the first that comes out is security when using cloud applications. And that's something that you all, I'm sure, are looking at, is how are you going to secure your cloud applications going forward so everyone can access them in the right manner and in a secure manner going forward, especially when everyone's working remotely now. Also looking at reducing cost of network. I mean, that's a clear thing that we see across the board, is cost is a key driver on this. But also on top of that, we're looking at improving the performance of business applications. And one of those key ones that comes through this is enabling improving the performance of video. As we're moving to this more video centric world and more cloud based world, making sure the network is able to handle all these services with a great security wraparound is going to be key on this. One interesting point that we also saw coming out from our enterprise research was that we're seeing an increased number of companies paying for employees' home broadband or offering network devices for home usage. This is predominantly in larger enterprises, and this isn't saying that all of the employees in the business are getting this, but what we're seeing is key workers. So let's say the C-level employees or contact center staff are going to really be looking at how can we offer them great access. There's nothing worse than sitting for a long time on a call to a company and waiting to get through to a call center agent. You finally get through and you can't hear them because their line's bad or their network's bad. So I think that's going to be a really key area, is really understanding, right, where are our key employees and how are they going to work in the future? What do we need to get them from a networking perspective to make sure that that access is great throughout there? And we're seeing a lot more focus now around SD-WAN and WAN services like that to offer quality of service, but also offer that security wrap on top of all of that going forward. So to kind of summarize what we've seen this massive move towards remote working, and it's going to stay there in the future. And you as a business have got to realize how many of my staff are going to be working remotely, how many of them are going to be mobile and moving around the place, and how many of them are going to be in the office. And how do we offer that same experience to them regardless of where they are? And that really focuses again on these key areas. How do we offer them the great collaboration service that we need? How do we make sure all those applications that they're going to get are going to be moved to the cloud? And how do we move that to the cloud securely and easily so that there's no disruption to our business? How do we also then wrap around security on top of all that? What services do we need to look at? Do we need to be investing in SD-WAN and moving our solutions around to that? And how do we make sure our end users, and our employees are getting the right access regardless of where they are as well? And I think the key point on top of all of this is you're going to have to choose the right vendor who's going to enable this. And I think you're in the right place here. We've worked with N4 Engage for a long time, and it's really great to see how they're bringing all of this together in a great wrap with a great selection of vendors behind them to enable any customer to really get the best out of what they have here. I'd like to hand back to the team and thank everyone for listening in today. It's my pleasure to be invited here by N4 Engage, and I look forward to engaging with you all in the future. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll catch you soon.